As he walked into the Medi-Center, he scanned the room before he heard the familiar voice. "No, I'll be fine," heard Cole say from an examination area. "Look, just stitch it up." "We can't. We don't understand what you are requesting," a doctor said. A note of helplessness. David stepped in and saw Cole gripping his forearm tightly through bloody fingers. "Doctor, the medical procedure my colleague is requesting hasn't been seen by non-humans. However, we do have a combat medic on board with us, and I can call for her to perform it under your supervision," David said while holding eye contact with Cole. Cole Smith, a brilliant engineer and one of the few from his region to pass the screening process, wasn't bad looking. Considering he is from Central North America, light blonde hair and rich brown eyes are common out there, but on board the ship he is one of only 5 that share the look. The Vishtani doctor studied David for a second, or perhaps he was spacing out, before finally speaking, "Yes, that is acceptable. I would like to see this stitching." The Vishtani, the closest thing to what bipedal Komodo dragons would be like, provided that they stood, on average, 5 feet tall. They themselves aren't bulky, however, their scales had a twist in their design. Having 2 plates at every connection, they can actually send the upper one flying away from them, both for defense and offense. Their heads were a snout that formed from their maws of sharp fangs. Being carnivorous meant that most other races didn't like them on first contact, however. Their minds were brilliant, and they are often counted on to find solutions to issues others have. "Great," David said before turning to the side. "Gavi, please find and contact Angela and ask her to come here. Also inform her that she will be stitching someone up," he told his wrist device. "Message sent, she is on her W," Gavi said before switching to broadcasting across the ship. "All crew clear hallways C-23, C-25, D-35, and stairwell C-11. This is not a drill. All crew clear hallways C-23, C-25, D-35, and stairwell C-11. This is not a drill." "Maybe I was too hasty with the information," David chastised himself. "Well, at least she is on her way here," he said as he turned back to Cole and the doctor, smiling gently. "So, Cole, what happened exactly?" Cole's blood went cold. "Well, He stalled, waiting to organize his thoughts. "Well, I was heading to my room when I saw a cool-looking girl, so I went and struck up a conversation." "Stop. Cole, you are skipping details, like the fact that this girl you were talking to was a Xandraphane." David cocked his eyebrow. "And Cole, allow me a second to guess what happened. You spoke to her and believed that she would allow you to feel her tail. But when you did so, she believed you were assaulting her and attacked you back, landing 5 deep, razor-like cuts on your arm. How—" The doctor babbled. "How did you know it was a Xandraphane?" He looked shocked at David. "Well, Engineer Cole here is one of my team and signed off on his right to privacy during the selection process," David said with sass creeping in. "That's right, Cole. I know exactly what you surfed up before and during boot camp." With a quick wink. Almost on cue, the Medi-Center door slid open, revealing the slightly sweaty form of combat medic Angela. She had seemingly run there at most likely full speed. She rushed over to David in 2 quick bonds and lifted him a bit off the ground. "Who was hurt? Where are they? How are their vitals?" she barked in rapid fire at David. "Cole, 5 deep cuts across the arm," he said calmly and pointed a finger over. "He is over there, and is fine, but has a broken heart." The Mediterranean combat medic was one of 2 people on the human crew that David would genuinely call an Amazon. Her body was well cared for, and she doesn't waste time when working out. Her blonder hair was a gift from her mother, her eye color coming from her father, a deep blue. She let David go and sighed. The tension in her muscles washed away. "For Gaia's grace, please don't let the AI deliver messages. I thought someone was dying," and walked over to Cole. "Okay, let me see the damage." Cole may be a great engineer, but is also dumb sometimes, however. He and everyone on the team know their 2 rules. The first is Angela is an angel and should be listened to. Second, Angela is a demon and should be listened to. And Cole didn't hesitate and followed her orders. "Well, the good news is, I don't think anything important was cut. Moreover, stitches will not be necessary," she said as she looked over the cuts. "Some disinfectant and a bandage on your arm for a week." Swirling on the balls of her feet, she turned to the doctor. Do you have a Class 2 wound disinfectant along with a Class 1 roll of medical cloth? Yes, the doctor stammered. 1 second, I'll retrieve some before rushing over to a cabinet on the side of the room. It took the doctor a few seconds before returning and handing Angela everything she requested, and then watched in amazement as she quickly and efficiently treated the wounds. Well, Smith, she started while dusting her pants. You are very lucky she just missed a main vein in your arm, and in the manner she cut you made clean cuts. She reached over and yanked on Cole's ear. But if you get hurt again in the next week, I will let you die, putting more force on the last 3 words. Miss Angela, while you are very skilled, the doctor began, I must say that your threat of entropic finality is unbecoming of a medical professional. Looking outraged at the human combat medic, his scales expanding a bit. Oh, well, I meant more in the metaphorical, she replied with a warm smile. He will still be alive, however, will most likely never be able to live that life out. I see. The doctor paused, uncertain how to proceed with this information. Right, Cole, go wait outside. I need a word with you, David said, seeing a need to smooth the tension out, and watched Cole for a second as he stepped away. Angela, the good doctor here didn't mean to insult you or your bedside manners. He is, however, one of the ship's doctors, and as such he must safeguard the lives of everyone, including Mr. Smith. That seemed to relax her a bit. And doctor, believe me when I say Angela has, due to no fault of her own, had to tend to the wounds of that team member for the better part of a year thus far, on a nearly daily basis. David explained and watched as the Vishtani's scales smoothed out. Now, Angela. David walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. The doctor, while he knows about us, seems to need a bit of help catching up on human medical practices. He gestured at the doctor with his free hand. Would you be so kind as to aid him, so that he will be able to tend to our wounds? She snapped her eyes to him, staring into his eyes for a moment before realizing the undertone of his statement. Oh, yes. She turned back to the doctor and extended her hand. Forgive me, doctor, she said with a genuine smile. I am Lieutenant First Class Angela Villa. It is a pleasure to meet you. The doctor looked at her stunned for a second, before reaching out to shake her hand. Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you too. I am Medical Officer Zalet. He stared in disbelief at the speed with which her posture and attitude shifted from anger to happiness. I will say that I'm still curious about this stitching, the one called Cole spoke of. Oh, well, of starters, stitching is the layman's term. In the medical field, it is called sutures. It's a method to tend... Angela began to explain to the doctor while David walked away. David walked out of the Medi-Centner only to walk right into his next problem. As he saw Cole being surrounded by security personnel, accompanied by 2 Xandraphanes. Cole, for his part, had stayed calm, even as the guards asked him very pointed questions, while the Xandradane officer, based on her uniform, demanded Cole be arrested. As soon as Cole spotted David, he yelled, David, help! Xandradanes are recognized as the female variant of the Xandraphane race. Standing on average 5 feet tall, they are actually 6 feet long due to their digitigrade legs that end in clawed toes. Their homeworld is a Class 3 death world and is often described as a redwood forest in near-constant twilight. Their humanoid face makes them one of the few races most humans agree are attractive. Their eyes are wolf-like in nature and have a color ranging from blue to yellow, and they have canine ears of a few shapes, but wolf ears are most common and rest near the top of their heads. They are also one of the few omnivores in the community, and that shows in their teeth which sit under full lips. The Xandradanes are normally slimmer than their male counterpart, favoring an athletic build of gymnasts. They have a coat of fur that covers all of their body and can range from black to blue. And while patterns are rare, they are a few with stripes. Despite the fur, they do grow hair, in the human understanding, atop their heads and above the eyes, and a few males have been known to grow beards. Their need for balance has given them a tail. Although the shape and size vary, the most common one is that of a fox. Their people have a rather unique hand structure, being paws that have enough space between joints to work a bit like a human hand, under which claws hide. David, not wasting time, walked over to the guard questioning Cole and said in his calmest and stern voice, "Excuse me, I am the liaison officer of the human crew on board. May I ask what is happening here? The coal cache guard looked over at David and grumbled something in his native dialect before speaking. The human here has been accused of malicious assault of a fellow crew member. I see. Has his liaison officer I wish to speak with his accuser? Perhaps it was a misunderstanding of some kind, David stated, in a frank and censor tone. The Xandrandane officer's wolf-like ears twitch, and she walked right up to David, her eyes staring daggers at him, while her silvered coat of fur shifted as she moved. Her eyes were a rich amber, and her hair was a wild mane like that of an Amazonian, and her face showed her dislike at David's insinuation of a misunderstanding. While her uniform hides a lot from her form, she shows signs of a powerful physique, while her foxtail whips with irritation. "There is no misunderstanding," she hissed. "Your pack member assaulted one of mine. He will pay for his transgression." David watched the officer for a moment before crossing his arms over his chest and tilting his head, mimicking the Xandranfane's male greeting stance. "I am David Solomon, the Human Legion officer for this vessel, and am humbled by your address to myself," he said before relaxing. "However, my teammate is what your race calls Gandin, and he meant no harm or ill intent." The Xandrandane officer stepped back, staring David down a bit wide-eyed, before narrowing in again. "If what you say is true, then he would know of our customs as you do." Yet he didn't. Her voice sounded resolute that she had them trapped now. "Explain that?" David knew the answer, however, knew she wouldn't take it from him. He gave his best confused face and turned to Cole. "She has a point, Cole. You should know more than me about their customs." He gave Cole a wink out of her line of sight. "Where did you learn about their race?" Cole watched his only way of resolving these throw him to the wolves, but caught on a second after. Well, most of my research was on the human data net," he said plainly. "I haven't had a chance to access the galactic data network yet." "I see," David said, faking a constrained voice. "These would explain the issue." He turned back to the Xandrandane. "The human data net unfortunately only has very little information on your race, due mainly because of our distance from each other." He looked over to the other Xandrandane and the back to the officer. "He is a Gandin, however. His information on your kind and your customs and traditions is basically non-existent." David thought hard for a second. The Xandranfanes were and still are a powerful warrior race that lives in a loose but strict matriarchal society. Normally, it would be Cole's mother or sister that would decide how he would repay this, and because of this, the situation was bad. However, there was a way. "Forgive me if I am wrong," David said as calmly as he could. "Your race has a tradition of workers for restitution." "Correct?" gesturing an open hand to the officer in front of him. "Yes, however, it is only the offended that can accept this," she said, as the girl behind her moved closer. "What would you suggest?" The Xandradane behind the officer had a wild mane of hair too, however. Her fur color was a light-blued gray, and her eyes were a deep green. "1 week ship time," David said, keeping his voice level. "Engineer Cole will spend his free time helping and aiding you in your work and non-personal matters," he said, turning his head past the officer and addressing the girl. "During which time, hopefully, he will learn more of your people and your ways. If that is agreeable to you?" She hesitated, her ears twitching as she thought, before looking at Cole and then back to David. "I think that will be okay. I enjoyed our conversations, and in light of what you said, his actions—" She stopped, her gaze hardened. "While unacceptable, they do make sense." "Great, so he will start tomorrow. Both he and I just got out of ISO. I'll make sure he stays out of your fur," David said while maintaining a cool head. "Although I do need a way to stay in contact with both of you just in case his stupidity gets the better of him." As he moved his hand with the palm up, a gesture for a request in their culture. The officer hesitated before gently raising David's hand closer to him and said, "I am Alaris Hincarno, liaison officer to the Xandrafan pack aboard this vessel," before closing her hand a bit and lowering his hand back to its original position. The girl walked up and raised David's hand, too. "I am Kiga Noe Alaris Hincarno. It is a pleasure to meet you," she said, watching David as she did. "I am a lab assistant, before lowering David's hand past the starting positions, signaling that the request has been fulfilled. If everyone could hear thoughts, a loud click would have rung out from David's head just now. "Forgive me if this is presumptuous," David said in a slow and deliberate tempo, "but you are Alaris's daughter?" Before Kiga could answer, Alaris stepped in. "Yes, she is," getting between Kiga and David. "I see, this all makes more sense now," David said with a step back. "Not to be rude, but how old is Kiga if she were on Zandra?" "It's none of," Alaris started to say before Kiga cut her off. 22 alignments, she said over her mother's shoulder. "In 2 weeks will be my Kilahinner," she continued despite her mother's growling. David absorbed the information for a second, given their day pre-year count compared to Earth, along with the oddities of their culture. Kiga, in Earth terms, would be about 20 years old. Moreover, she would have her coming-of-age celebration soon, too. "That is wonderful news," David said calmly. "I wish you a great life and light for the rest of your days." Alaris let out a sigh. "David, you do your people's moniker proud. We thank you for your wishes and the spirit it has been given," before turning her daughter around and pushing her away a few steps before they started to walk together. David's attention switched to the Clocash guard. "It seems the matter was indeed a misunderstanding. Can you please not file this incident? I will see to Engineer Smith's discipline personally," while bobbing his head a bit from side to side. The guard muttered again before saying, "That is fine. It seems you have a silver tooth, David Solomon," before walking away with some of the other security guards. Cole sheepishly looked over to David. "So how badly did I mess up?" David let out a long and drawn-out groan. "That's bad." Cole shifted where he sat. "You, Cole, lucked the hell out," David said in an agitated tone. "The one that cut you is the first daughter of the Zandrafane liaison officer. Moreover, in terms of Earth's social standards, she is above the age of consent." Cole's face shifted to gleeful idiocy. "However, her mother chose to avoid an intergalactic incident by not tearing you limb from limb." Cole blanked out for a second. "Wait, what?" "Oh yeah, in her culture it would be 100% okay." David stared at Cole, his cold death stare cutting deep. "If she chooses that, even Angela would be able to stitch you back together, but I got them to agree to short-term slavery instead." Cole now switched back to confused. "Yeah, you are for the next week during your free time going to be Kiga's butler, effectively." "Wait, free time, like no downtime?" Cole's mind seemed to have a different sense of priorities. David thought about it for a second, giving Cole false hope. "Yep, no downtime unless for sleeping. You start tomorrow." As he started to walk, "Now come on, I need some extra hands."